Now, from the garden and into the studio, we're now joined by Jeff Pavlat here in the studio to talk about aloes, one of the plant specialties in your amazing garden, Jeff. Absolutely stunning place. Thank you so much for opening up your garden to us.
Thank you.
Absolutely beautiful. I can tell you're a real passionate collector of plants. Tell me how you got involved in the cacti and succulents. What was it that drew you to that plant family?
I mean, I started out, I've had an interest in cacti for a long time, just, one or two in pots when I started out. But when I moved to my house and started trying to landscape, I realized the deer were going to eat anything that I put in the ground if it wasn't really tough. And then with water also. So it was really the combination of the deer and then wanting things that are drought tolerant. And that's how I got started with the whole garden. And then once I got that planted, I started discovering, in my search for interesting things to go in the garden, the Cactus and Succulent Society. And I found there was a whole world of other things, and I got a greenhouse. Then it just really snowballed. Where now it's like I'm cramming plants in and could really use a second greenhouse. But
well, people get addicted to different things. That's okay. You can just accept that addiction. But there are some really striking qualities about these plants that really make them pop out, that make them special. What's your favorite thing about the aloes?
I've kind of really been attracted to plants that have the symmetry of a rosette, which I also like agaves a lot. There are a lot of those in my garden. Aloes, just the really strong form, and I mean, I think they're really beautiful, the variation in the colors and textures. I mean, that pretty much goes for all of the different succulents I like, but in particular, the rosette form is what I like about aloes.
We're surrounded by beautiful plants that you've brought to the studio today, and we're going to be talking about those. And I know that a lot of these plants also bloom, which is something that is a very attractive feature that and most people don't think of when they think of aloes.
And they do have quite striking blooms. I think when it comes to aloe, most people are familiar with aloe vera, which has to be fairly large in size before it'll bloom. So people have a hard time in a pot in the house getting it to do that. But aloe blooms will last for weeks. They also tend to bloom, a big chunk of them bloom in the wintertime, which is nice. You get some color. And there's such a huge range of sizes too. I mean, there's a aloe that would fit almost anybody's garden. I mean, they range from little tiny things to giant tree forms.
Well, more and more people are interested in the aloes. As our climate has gotten warmer and our winters milder, a lot of these plants can be grown in the ground now. We want to, before we dive in and talk about the plants, just real briefly talk about the fact that people can learn about a lot of these species and actually pick up some of the rare and unusual things that we're going to be showing at the Austin Cactus and Succulent Society show and sale. And that's happening Labor Day weekend, is that right?
Labor Day weekend. We have a sale twice a year, one in April, usually the second weekend, and then a 3-day show, Labor Day weekend every year. And we have free literature we give out. We have 7 or 8 vendors that sell a whole range of plants. Several of them come from out of state. So it's a good place to find things you're not going to find locally.
Okay, well, let's dive in and show some of these cool plants that people will be able to probably find something close to a lot of the things that you're going to be showing. The first plant that we're going to be talking about, this is one of the few that has a common name that we can use, and it's a big broadleaf aloe. This is very striking.
That is called the coral aloe, or Aloe striata. It comes from South Africa. It's one of the more cold hardy aloes. You can grow it in the ground if your temperatures are going to stay probably in the mid-20s. If you don't have a long period of freezing weather, I mean, and if it is going to be much below mid-20s, you might want to throw a towel over it. But it has beautiful coral red flowers, and they stay in bloom for up to a month and a half.
Okay, coral aloe or Aloe striata. Okay, beautiful plant, and again, I really like that bold foliage on it, the big broad leaf on it. Very beautiful plant. Immediately next to it, gorgeous plant with well-armed, as many of them are.
And that one is Aloe porphyrostachys. And it's kind of a mouthful. That aloe actually comes from Saudi Arabia, and that's about full size. That one blooms for me every year. I'm not really sure about cold hardiness on it. I haven't tried it out in the ground. I keep it in a pot. But one nice thing about aloes You can get plants like that. They'll grow fine outside most of the year. You can put it in your garden in a pot. You can bring it up next to the house or on a patio, just to keep it a little bit warmer during the wintertime.
Right.
So you can work with them outside, even if you're not going to try to put it in the ground.
Yeah, and I keep mine in containers, and then during the wintertime, I just move them up underneath an eave, and I've never had a problem with that.
Because a number of the aloes can handle freezing temperatures for brief periods. If you're in an area that's going to stay below freezing for an extended period, if they're not protected, they will turn to mush.
Right.
Generally, they would start freezing from the tip back.
Right.
And even if it does get some burn on the plant, usually they will grow out of it. They grow fairly quickly.
Yeah. Tough plants, and again, more adapted to Austin than we would have imagined just a few years ago. Let's continue our tour, Jeff. There's a number of plants right next to you that are really striking, including this little tiny dwarf one that I really like that.
This one here, and it's actually very soft. It looks a little meaner than it is. That one is Aloe haworthioides, which it's named for looking like another close aloe relative, the haworthias. This is full size. This is several plants. It just clumps, and it comes from Madagascar. And
beautiful little plant.
It's very different looking. I mean, a lot of people wouldn't even realize that was an aloe.
True. And again, a lot of the botanical names, they don't have common names, and I want to let people know that on our website we'll have all of these listed, so they can go to klru.org/ctg to learn about all these plants. The tall one next to that is particularly striking, and that looks like it will grow to a tree form.
This one does. This is Aloe ramosissima. It grows primarily in South Africa. It makes a large shrub. It could be 6 or 7 feet tall, I believe. It grows fairly slow. I mean, I've had this plant for 5 or 6 years, and it's about doubled in size. So it's not something that's going to get away from you.
Right.
It's probably one that's best in a container. It's not that cold hardy.
It's a
attractive plant for a container.
And the one immediately adjacent to it as well as a nice strappy look, not as a regular form, but but that's nice. It's nice to have the variation.
This is one that clumps quite a bit. This is Aloe cameronii, and it comes from Zimbabwe, Malawi, some countries around there. A lot of aloes come from Africa, primarily Africa, and then on up into Arabia. And the red color on this one, this will be green if it's given a lot of water, but when stressed, it takes on this red color. So if you want to get that color in some of your plants, don't water them very much and give them a lot of sun.
Okay. Well, Jeff, I want to let people know that we are running out of time. So I want just the form on this one was so striking. I wanted people to see it. We don't need to talk about it as a plant, but remind us again about the cactus, the show and sale, so people can be sure to go in and get some of these incredible plants. Okay.
The sale will be Labor Day weekend. It runs from 10 o'clock to 5 o'clock in the evening, and it's a 3-day show, so all 3 days. And we have a number of club members that'll be there to answer questions, and
we'll have information on the Central Texas Gardener website about that. I can't thank you enough. These are gorgeous plants. Your garden is spectacular. Thanks for sharing all of this great information with us.
Thanks for having me.
Coming up next is our friend Skip Richter.